Hello everybody and welcome to the GMS Magazine videos. I am Paco Garcia, your host, and this is a GMS Academy, the show in which as a writer and an author I give you my insights as a GM, a player and a convention attendee. Not long ago, as in, 2 days ago, the controversies sparked up in Facebook about having teenagers at the table. And I am here to tell you that that is the best thing that you could possibly do for your games. But there are some caveats that we need to consider. Let's game. Pretty much since I have been playing role-playing games, I have heard the role-playing games are dying kind of thing. It just happens constantly. That's not true. We are probably healthier now than we have been since ever, with more products and more people joining in all the time. And that is a very, very good thing. But what does it mean? It means that we need young blood. That's just the way it is. If you are around my age, over 35, you will have joined the role-playing gamers when you were a teenager. I know people as young as 12, who got into it as young as 12, and they just forevermore. It's the best time to get into pretty much any kind of hobby, because that's when you're going to start as a young person. You're going to start forming your ideas, forming your hobbies, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing, because you are at an age of exploration, finding out things, of discovery, and every new thing is wonderful and exciting and makes you feel amazing. And role-playing games can do that. They did that for an awful lot of people. They did that for me, certainly. So having teenagers is one of the ways we have to make sure that the hobby is going to live a very long and a very healthy life. Also, I don't know if you have had any teenagers, somebody 17, 18 at your table. But where I live, they are just wild. I kid you not. The differences in generations, in the way that we used to play, the way that we appreciate life, and the way they do it themselves. The differences are absolutely ginormous. And the sheer vitality that we probably had as well, but we are unlikely to be able to keep up with. That sheer enthusiasm, that unwielded happiness and recklessness and abandon in which they throw themselves into the game with is so refreshing, is so invigorating. And also because they think about things in a very different way that we do, their ideas are very likely to surprise us. And I find that absolutely fascinating. Totally and utterly fascinating. So why this video? Why the controversy? Well, somebody posted in Facebook how he had to kick one player from their group. And kicking players from groups is something that I will cover in a different video. So please remember to subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when we upload more videos in the not too distant future from different shows as well. Anyway, he was mentioning how he had to kick that player off because even though he was late 20s, perhaps 30 years old, he was hitting on a 17-year-old girl who plays at their table. Furthermore, when the GM wasn't looking, and this is the GM who had to kick the person off the table, when the GM wasn't looking, he went to get some coffees or something, that 30-year-old guy would hit on the GM's wife. By all means, a potentially very problematic player. Hitting on people, we like them, and we may make advances in a way that, it's appropriate. That's how we meet people. It's a way of doing it, and there is not a way of doing it. Approaching somebody's wife is questionable enough. Depends on what kind of relationship you have, but something that you have to do carefully, but yeah, it's at the very least questionable, as in whether it's wise to do so. But for a 30-year-old man to hit on a 17-year-old girl, that has some different consequences. Depending on the country you live in, the age of consent may vary. It can be 16, it can be 18, it can be as young as 14 in some countries. That's not to justify or any way, shape or form hitting on a 17-year-old at a gaming table. It can be problematic. Let's assume that the age of consent, or what we have in Spain, the majority of age, the age of maturity, that's 18 years old. That's when you are allowed to drink and get a driving license in my country. I know in the United States, I believe it's 21, and it doesn't matter how old you are. I've lived in Chicago, and every single time I wanted to buy a beer, somebody would ask for some proof of ID to make sure that I was over the age of 21. Hello. Anyway, it can be problematic. Why? You're hitting on somebody who's underage. That could easily mean you're a pedophile. I don't care how well-formed that teenager was, how mature she looked, how voluptuous. I don't care about any of those things. If you hit on somebody who is underage and you actually do anything, even if there is consent in brackets, big brackets, you will still be considered a pedophile. Get over it. And worse, you might be a pedophile. So you have to think about that one very, very carefully. If you have somebody at your table who's hitting on a 17-year-old girl or boy, doesn't matter, 16, be very mindful, because the likelihood could easily happen that that young person has a parent who may not be at all happy with the situation. And the likelihood is that the GM will bear the responsibility, because that's what the usual, okay, may not be for you, the usual social contract is in role-playing games, or the owner of the place where you actually meet. So that could be problematic. I mean, I could keep saying reasons why hitting on a teenager is problematic, but trust me, if you need me to give you more reasons why hitting on a teenager is problematic, you're likely to be part of the problem. Very likely to be part of the problem. Especially in a social environment like role-playing games. Not to mention the fact that if that young woman felt uncomfortable with this 30-year-old man hitting on her, went to her parents, and her parents started to talk about, look what happened in a role-playing game, you are messing up our hobby, you could be messing up the whole scene in a town of role-playing games because you're an idiot who hits on a 17-year-old girl and makes her feel uncomfortable. And she tells her parents or guardians. So it's a very risky thing to do. How to have a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 19-year-old even at the table. Set the tone. Set the tone. Somebody in Facebook said to me, if there isn't a relationship when you start it, don't try to start the relationship at the table. It's a harsh rule, but it keeps people safe. That doesn't mean that you cannot say, oh, let's go someplace else and, have a beer together. Not a beer with a teenager, for goodness sake. Don't! Seriously. Have a drink. Whatever. But not at the table. If you are the GM, it may fall onto you the responsibility to say, especially if you're going to have somebody joining in later in the campaign, set the tone. Talk to that person. Have a session 0 with that person. Say, we have teenagers. This, and this is not allowed. And if I see you doing this, and this, if this tone is overdone, if these situations are discussed, if this is overstepped, you're out. This cannot happen because there are effectively children at the table. Make sure you do that just to keep everyone safe, just to make sure that you don't get a weirdo who will think that making sex jokes in front of a 15 or 16-year-old kid is a good idea, because it jolly isn't. And yes, I know what you're going to say, oh, well, they're so mature, they do that all the time. Well, they're not adults. You are. So behave like one. Keep those kids safe, because they are the ones who are going to take the baton of role-playing games, of gaming in general, and carry it on for the rest of their lives. So yes, by all means, involve teenagers, but don't involve weirdos and creepos who think that hitting on a 17-year-old is a good idea, because it jolly isn't. It really, really isn't. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and do remember to subscribe again to the channel. Leave me your comments down there, which are always very much appreciated, and I will try to answer them soon and as many times as I possibly can. But until the next time, thanks once again, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.